Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop Fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Hemp Foods European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to the Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Underworld Blood Wars is over, and we reek of canine insolence.
The vampire and lycan clans had been at war for centuries, turning our world into a battlefield. For me, the fight is personal. Everyone I've ever loved has been hunted down. Now a new war is being waged.
Selene, the lycans are moving again. They have a new leader, Marius.
I'm finished with this war.
Well, it's not finished with you. He wants the blood of you and your daughter.
Even I don't know where she is. I need you to deliver a message. Tell your Marius I'm coming for him. Do you understand your message?
We need Selene to end the war. She cannot be trusted. She is the purest of us all.
She is the key to the futures of lycans and vampires.
And when we have the blood of Selene and her daughter,
we will be invincible.
I will be more powerful than any vampire in this coven.
You must help me protect her. You must go north.
You will find answers there.
If you want to win this war, you will need to go further than even a warrior of your renown has ever ventured before.
Andy, it's number 5. We just did number 5.
Number 5 is alive, Pete. Yeah, we made it.
5 is alive. This was it. This was the last one. We made it through Underworld. We did the whole thing. But just in case they keep making these movies, where would you like people to go to be the first to know when Selene is back with her PVC?
You know, I'm glad you asked, Pete. The best place for people to go, because inevitably, Pete, let me just tell you something. We have been doing this podcast for a while, and now we have member bonus episodes, right? Where members of our show can actually get extra episodes about movies that aren't released to the public. Well, the movie's released to the public. Our episodes are not released to the public. They're released to members only. And generally, they are us looking back at a series that we have done in the past, and we are filling in a gap in that particular series. So if people want to learn about memberships, because just in case Underworld 6 comes out, Pete, and they want to hear it, it likely will be heard as a members bonus episode. So you just head over to thenextreel.com/membership, and you can learn all about joining the team and becoming a part for as little as $1 a month. That's right. Very little. So easy place to sign up. Just head over to thenextreel.com/membership. So we have talked a lot about Underworld.
Underoos. Yeah. Yes. We have.
Underworldia. We have determined that this whole thing is actually Underworldia.
We have. That's where this whole thing takes place. That's right. Underworldia.
It takes place in Underworldia. Yeah. The giant single continent.
It's the Pangea, the Pangetic continent of Underworldia.
Right. This is actually right. Right. Yeah. So we've talked about a lot of it, but you know who has a little bit of a connection to it in some interesting way is one of our fellow hosts on the Next Reel podcasts.
Who is it? Who is it? Who is it?
That is?
Kyle Olson. Say it so. Kyle Olson. Kyle, are you here?
I am here as well.
Kyle is here. And we are going to chat with him about Underworld.
That's true, because when you guys announced you were doing the Underworld series, I said, that's very interesting because I have a very close personal connection to the first film. And I said, it's a small story, but would you like to hear it? And they both said, I said, please, I've been wanting to tell the story for so long. And I said, fine.
Well, and we should set the stage. We have not heard the story yet. We've talked about the story. We don't even know if it's any good.
I've never actually told this story publicly before because I was worried because there's legal ramifications, but it turns out I'm in the clear.
You actually had to verify it? Somebody you called your attorney? Did you check your local jurisdiction?
I checked statute of limitations, and I'm okay.
It was 2003. I'd like to think that things are clear.
So we're good.
Do you think? I think maybe they all listen to this podcast, so I'm glad you checked.
Well, and it
we
might
have
not
a
be
big
so
contingent
bad,
in the lawyers
because it might be Kate Beckinsale coming after you in her PVC outfit.
Oh, I would not mind that at all.
Might be okay.
All right.
Might be okay.
So what happened to you in 2003?
So let's set the scene. So this is the late 90s. So as we're having this sort of renaissance with Dungeons and Dragons right now, which is justified, and I'm glad everybody's out there playing it again. In the late 90s, role playing was huge, but Dungeons and Dragons was not. It was really on the outs. The big game then was Vampire. So there was a group called White Wolf Games that created a game called Vampire the Masquerade, and it was huge because what it did is cross over from the sort of the stat monitoring thing of D&D, the very the charts and the map, and they actually got in the goth kids and the theater majors and that stuff because their system was you weren't a dungeon master, you were a storyteller, and everyone else were players. And so it was a little more improv base where you were like supposed to be your characters and act things out, and the dice were just there to settle disputes. If you still had your stats and you still had your thing, but it was a more of an acting exercise, because when you were a vampire, you were supposed to feel the existential pain of watching those you love die and trying to keep the monster inside you under control and retain that piece of humanity.
I mean, I remember this. I can't quite remember how. Like, it was bigger than probably my memory serves. Like, weren't there like books and a TV show and like the whole works. Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing. Wow. I mean, from this, it actually they went on. They created multiple editions. So and then from Vampire, then was it was always something the something. So it was Werewolf the Apocalypse. It was, and then when you were a ghost, it was Wraith the Oblivion. That was their thing. And I mean, it got bigger and bigger. You could play, by the end of it, you could play as a fae with like essentially like a fairy or a mummy, or like you could be a hunter who hunted all the rest of these. I mean, like they really went full bore, and it was huge. Like you say, it actually went to television show. There was actually a show. Aaron Spelling,
it was a spelling show. Kindred the Embraced.
Kindred the Embraced. Yes. That's right. Actually, it ran like 9 episodes in the 90210 period. It was white hot. I have a small anecdote about that as well, because this is a little bit because I can tell you about that when I get into the rest of the story. So I was huge into these games. I played. I had my characters that I would do all the time, and with friends and stuff too. And so then when I graduated college, one of my friends was a computer genius, Jason. Unfortunately, I've lost track with him, or I'd like to have him, do his part of the story. But he got an internship for a computer company in Atlanta. And I was like, hey, White Wolf Studios is in Atlanta. They're the guys who do that. And so I started writing to White Wolf, and I found out they had an internship program. So I'm like, hey, man, if you move to Atlanta for this job, I'll come down there too, and to get an internship and join White Wolf. And so we went down. We took a trip just to check things out, and I got an interview at White Wolf. And I got to go into the studio and like see all the guys who wrote and the artists and stuff that made these fantastic games. I got along well with everybody, so I was like, this is doing pretty good. So then over the course of like 2 years, this was like 98, 99, I was an intern for White Wolf Studios. If you sent any fan mail in, it was probably me that was answering it, because nice. Free labor. I got to write a little stuff, so I have my name in a couple different books, and then what I wanted to be was a writer. So I from that internship time, I sort of then parlayed that into writing gigs for them for a while, and so I helped write the revised. So they had the first edition of Vampire and Werewolf and all those things. Then they had the second edition, and then when the third edition was coming out, it was called Revised. So that was what I worked on, was the revised version. And I helped write Werewolf the Rise. And I say helped, very, very small, because I was an intern. They're like, I don't want to write these boring rule stuff. You write that. Oh, okay. Whatever you say. And flavor text and that kind of stuff, like just little bits along the way. But my name is in the book. Yeah, it still is. So if you go to, I think you'll have to go to Drive Through RPG right now. It's the only way you can find those books anymore. I can at some point I can give you my very, very small lexicon of things that I contributed to. So, but I helped you, and I was, this was part of it. So I moved away, and then, life continues on, and, I got different jobs, and I met my wife, and we got married. And so I just sort of had moved on from all that stuff. And Amy was still a fan, but I wasn't role playing anymore. I wasn't, when you move away from a small sort of location based thing like that, they kind of forget about you. I wasn't emailing them. They weren't emailing me. It was fine. But then one day there was a knock on my door, and they said they had a package for me. And I was like, oh, all right, fun.
You touched it. Down, you took it from them.
I go down, I open it, and they hand me an envelope. And I was like, great. And they're like, you've been served. And I was like,
they say that in real life too.
They're like, bye. And they walk away. And I was like, oh, what happened? So I pulled it out. And so what it turns out is White Wolf Studios had sued Sony Pictures Entertainment for their film Underworld. Ooh. Because they're saying that the elements of Underworld were stolen from Vampire the Masquerade and Werewolf, especially, and that was where my name came in, because my name was as part of it. So I had to then go through all my archives, and this is like 3.5-inch discs. Like, this wasn't like I just go into Google Docs and do it. I'm like, no, I have this stuff somewhere, but let me find a drive I can. And then I had to produce all the stuff I had written for them and send it all into it. So if you're a fan of the World of Darkness, which is what the whole thing was called, like still is, I say, it's still around. They've had some their own ups and downs, but you can see that there are very, very clear things. Not only like cool vampires in leather, running around and shooting things, which is part of Vampire the Masquerade, but also the fact that the unholy alliance between a vampire and a werewolf is called an abomination. And in Underworld, they literally say, he's an abomination. Yeah. I was like, okay, hold on. Like, there's a lot of words in the
so many words.
Dictionary. Yeah, right. So all of my friends who were into World of Darkness were like, okay, come on. So apparently I checked into it just to see what, and so that was the end of my thing. I thought I called some people that I still knew there, was like, what's going on? And they told me that. And so what happened is basically Sony wrote them a big fat check. And so
somebody wrote
generally how these things are resolved.
Yeah. And so it went away. So yeah, I wanted to make sure that had been resolved, to make sure I was allowed to talk about it, because I was, part of the lawsuit.
None of that sweet money made it your way, I'm sure.
No, but luckily none of that legal action came my way either.
Sure.
So the one small thing I had learned about the thing is I was asking about Kindred the Embrace because it had come and gone before I actually started there.
So you didn't get to meet what happened? Thomas Howell.
I did not. No, but I asked about it because I asked some of the guys, because the same guys who were there had been there since the beginning, had written, for some of the original, and were around and involved with that. And I said, how did that work out? And why wasn't there any more? And they said, well, and I said, well, like, why isn't there any more? Like, after that, like, how come we haven't seen anything since then? And they said, well, so the guys, and I'm not sure exactly who it was, but like, basically, there's a couple of people who were running White Wolf at the time. I don't want to name any names because this is a secondhand story. They went to Hollywood because Aaron Sorkin had heard about this. Aaron Spelling had heard about this and summoned them and basically like, hey, I want to do something. And so they went out there like, oh boy, Aaron Spelling, this guy's a big deal. He's going to make a show. And they sat down and said, look, I love the vampires. And we take the soap elements of like Melrose Place and 90210 and we add vampires and monsters. It's going to be great. It's going to be an amazing show. And they're like, oh, great. He's like, all right, so you guys want to do a deal? All right, just have your lawyers call mine. And they're like, lawyers? Yeah, your entertainment lawyers, like your agents, your reps, just have them talk to me. And they went, oh, we don't have entertainment lawyers. She's like, oh, you should use mine.
Great.
And they went, oh, okay. And so they did.
It works out well for everybody.
Yeah. So right now, when the deal came down, Aaron Spelling owns World of Darkness in perpetuity. That means he's dead, and he still owns the World of Darkness on all television and movie projects. Wow. But however, the happy ending to that story is because he owns what was at the time. So they rebooted the World of Darkness, and that got out of that particular clause. So now that you're seeing other stuff go, there's video games that are out right now. I think there's been a lot of like buying back and forth of the properties. So World of Darkness is still very much valid and still out there. And I still have friends of mine who worked on it and who are working on it still.
Wow.
But yeah, it's a fun little danger of Hollywood story.
That's fantastic. And you can actually watch Kindred the Embrace right now on YouTube. Suburban Vampire just posted it 2 months ago.
Nice.
Like, people
I own the DVD set if anyone wants to buy it.
Right, nice.
Don't worry, I'll pass it around.
If you're like a person who would read the books, it's an interesting version of the story. It's like, they make some minor alterations where you kind of go, huh, okay.
So, all right. So, given all that, what's your take on Underworldia as a universe?
And have you seen all 5?
I have the one you're about to do, the
Rise of the Lycans,
the flashback, Rise of the Lycans. That is the one I have not seen. I guess I'm more of a Kate Beckinsale fan than I am of an Underworld fan. But I've seen them all. I think it's a bit of diminishing returns. It's the opposite of Mission Impossible, where like Mission Impossible get better every time.
Yeah.
Underworld tends to follow the usual progression.
Though,
of
as
getting
it went on,
worse.
like after that lawsuit happened, did you go, well, they stopped with all the stealing of things. Like they didn't bring up abominations anymore.
Original ideas. I mean, obviously we're still talking about vampires and werewolves, so originality.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like that's ultimately where we came down to. Like it's like they stopped trying to come up with anything really original. original too. Like each movie is subsequently the same.
Just like, why introduce new concepts?
Right. Right.
People just want to see, cool pale people in black leather shooting stuntmen in really hairy suits.
Yeah.
That's Underworld.
And stunt woman.
And so women.
That's true. By the time we got to the end, we got a stunt woman.
Finally.
Represent.
We did it.
Yeah. Not exactly a Me Too friendly.
No.
Yeah. That's a
Awesome.
That's a great, terrible story, Kyle.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well
I'm
done.
glad we got to hear it. I'm glad the world finally gets to know.
Right. The
That's
world
right.
finally gets to know that people were like, when are you going to tell that amazing World of Darkness story?
Well, because I think everybody knows when you say, what do you know about Kyle Olsen? You say, well, his life does serve as a warning for others. So that's why we do this for the people.
I was told that I could talk about all my my vampire characters, but now it seems like we're out of time. Do I not have time to tell you about my character? I have a long history. There was time travel involved.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for indulging me.
Andy, number 5. Oh, boy. Are you relieved? Do you stand
We've
relieved?
hit the end of this franchise. I don't know if I suppose I'm relieved to be done and through with them all. But honestly, I mean, I've had a fun time. They're fun enough. They're easy watches. Nothing really tried my patience. And so I feel like, if there was another one, I'd be fine watching it too. But hitting number 5, I'm like, I'm also fine if I stop right now. That's about where I am.
Fine. I'm fine now. I'm fine right now with exactly as things are. I'm with you. I had a really good time, and I know that there are people out here. I've just been sort of reading a catalog of YouTube reviews or of Letterboxd reviews of people who really did not have a good time with this series, and I wonder why I see them so differently, as these movies so differently as some people whose opinions normally I trust and jive with. And but for me, I think this whole series kind of allows me to unleash just that a weird inner child. He comes out of the closet under the stairs and has a good time with just this over-the-top soap opera violence and vampires and werewolves. It's all fine. There's some stuff, which, of course, in this movie we also will be talking about, that is supremely silly. And only here do those things start to come out. When I just turn on the movie, I generally can get through it and be pretty excited about it. So here we are at number 5, and I have been alluding to this because for some reason, this feels like G.I. Joe to me. Let me explain. So you know how when you used to get your G.I. Joe character, you were a G.I. Joe guy, right?
In what context? The shows, the toys,
the action figures.
I was less the action figures, more the cartoon.
Well, you know how if you get the action figures, there was always an option you'd get the regular action figure, and then you'd get like the snow version of the action figure where they all have coats on. And same thing with Star Wars too, right? You'd have Luke, and then you'd have Jedi Luke, and you'd have Empire Luke, and he'd have his blue suit on, and Han Solo, he'd have the blue jacket on, and he'd be like, you'd get all the different versions.
Same thing with, any action figure from any franchise, right? They always, and that's why I think they always are changing it up in the movies, because like Spider-Man, now we need this version of Spider-Man. Now we need this version of Iron Man.
Miles Morales now. We get all the variants of Miles Morales. Okay, so that's what this feels like to me. We get Snow Selene and all the Arctic vampires, and I'm here for it. I think it's a fun variant of in this universe, and for just a little bit, a soupçon, they changed the look and general texture of parts of this movie in a way that I think works for it, and they should have done long ago.
Interesting. Okay. I can agree with a lot of that. I do. I feel like this still falls into the realm.
Though, man, that
you
just peed all over me is what you did.
No. I mean, I agree with you. I do. But I do feel like this is a franchise where they haven't fully learned their lessons of solidly figuring out their stories and what their own world is and the rules of the world. And they haven't quite figured out how to handle a lot of the elements of the look and everything. And I feel like even though they are changing things up and doing some more interesting things, a lot of it feels, we're still running into these constant issues that the franchise just has because they've established so many issues from the start. And so I agree with you that it's great to see them finally doing a few little things to change things up. I wish that they were doing more, though, and I wish they were tightening things up, too.
I'm absolutely in agreement with you. I think all I'm really suggesting, and I think we're on the same page, we're in violent agreement, is that it's about time. And where was this 4 movies ago? Because that's where I think we get lost. You are absolutely right. This movie comes with 8 hours of baggage behind it of missed opportunities, crazy design choices, crazy rule breaking, and all of that. And I don't think this movie is ultimately enough in sort of a redemptive capacity to make up for the cost that we endured over some of the nonsense before.
Well, and at this point, I do feel like we just have to take it for what it is, right? I mean, this is the end of the franchise. This is what they've given to us. And so this is what we have. I think that it's different when you look at something like, let's just look at the Alien franchise for a moment. That film started off with one director and a genre that they created and did very well. When James Cameron came on to do the second one, he wrote it and changed it so it was a little less, it looked very similar, but it was a little less horror and haunted house kind of in the spaceship, more the action, military feel that we have in that one. And he also shifted it up to kind of create a new baddie by giving us the Alien Queen. And that's kind of became a good way of modifying franchises. So even if it kept some of the look, you were still changing things enough to allow for new things to come in. And then introducing some big new change also. I think that was a critical thing. And I feel like this film, because the franchise started after, and I think this is a critical point, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, that really kind of created this trilogy of films that really is one giant story. And so it all looks the same. It looks like you could watch them back to back to back, and it's just one long 12-hour movie. And it's tied together that way. And I feel like they really, and maybe what we want is for them to have gone the Alien direction where each film ends up feeling like it's having its own sense and with the changes and everything that they're introducing. But what they also have done is very forcibly connected at least the first 2 and the last 2 films directly, like back to back with each other. So it really is a Lord of the Rings type of just one big story spread out over 12 years and with a flashback. And so I think that's the problem, is that it sets itself up like they're wanting to make some big changes in the scope of the story, but it's not giving us anything that's that new or exciting along with it. And so it just, because like we get to the second film, Evolution, it's like, okay, but where's the evolution? What's the big new exciting thing? There wasn't anything. I mean, we had the bat guy, but, and we had William, the giant wolf, but we didn't have, the promised evolution other than Selene can go in the sunlight now. And the fourth film, when we get to that, I liked that we went into the future 12 years, but it also felt exactly the same. Like there was nothing in that world that said, this is the future. There's a lot of interesting new things going on in this world. There wasn't. It was exactly the same as the second film.
It's exactly the same. And look at this movie. The big threat in this movie is that they still have bullets with infrared, or in the ultraviolet light in the shells. Like that, they introduced that in movie 1. Like there is there is no evolution of the general threat of violence of werewolves against vampires. Like, that's just...
Except a tracking bullet that has a life of its own and burrows itself around in your body.
That was... Okay, what are they trying to do there? It felt very strange. It reminded me of the intention of the Matrix nightmare scene, with the mouthless nightmare scene where he gets injected with the little spidery thing.
Yeah.
That was a tough watch, and that's like a tracking element in the stomach. It's the same kind of a thing. So that worked, and this didn't for me as much. This was just like a steampunk drill. It did not work.
Because what is it? Is it a weapon that's meant to burrow around in your body so that you can't heal? And so I thought, okay, that's actually kind of interesting, right? It kind of is this perma-destructive force that's now constantly hurting you in a creature that can otherwise heal itself. Or is it a tracking device, right? Because if it's constantly hurting you and it's inside your body, you're going to know that you need to take it out.
Right.
So what's the effectiveness of a tracking device?
Right. They knew immediately that it was inside and that it was some sort of a strange foreign substance. So they designed a tracking device that demanded the person actually have to take it out of them if they want to live. That's so dumb. It's so dumb. It's really the height of dumb.
It really was.
Before we dig into more of we have plenty of individual points to go through on this movie, but does it feel like we're finished?
Well, and that's a big problem, right? It doesn't feel like it's finished. In fact, it leaves the film feeling like they're setting us up for a sixth film, which, according to people involved, we're never going to get. Or if we do, it's going to be without Kate Beckinsale. That's kind of where things seem to be sitting. And so it feels like, I don't know, it feels like a franchise that they just want to keep running with. And I don't know. As I watch these, I feel like they're going to keep making the next one designed to feel like there's another one coming as long as they can, because they're always going to be hoping for more money to make another one, because it's a money-making franchise.
It is a money-making franchise. It wouldn't be the worst thing to throw another Underworld. They've established, I think, my sort of overall assessment of all five films is that they hit a general level of quality that might be in that sort of 1.5 to 2.5 stars, just low, middling to fair, right? They're not great action films, but they have enough elements in each of them to make you curious about what they're going to do next.
Yeah, right.
And that might be enough to sustain another movie or two. It might be enough. It might be enough to bring us the daughter as she miraculously ages, because that's what they do in these movies.
Exactly.
I think there's headroom on this movie to tell some more stories, and I think that's fascinating. I'd be interested to see what happens with it. But right now, this movie, I'm with you. It does not feel like a finale. It doesn't feel like the end, and I think that's unfortunate. I do want to go back. It brings me back to your comment about the Lord of the Rings versus Aliens. I think this movie the series demanded more of an Aliens approach, where they explore the universe using different genre conventions to kind of shake it up. And as a result, 5 movies, all the same, it gets exhausting. It gets exhausting. This is a hard series to binge. Without getting a little snooze in there every now and again.
It's a hard series to binge in the fashion we did, where we're also like really digging deep into each of them. Like I would hate to do this franchise in a minute by minute fashion. I just don't. I can't even imagine.
Oh my God!
But I like, if I just watch these and had them on and just like it was just kind of a background noise sort of thing where I was just laying around watching them, I don't think it would be a hard watch. I could easily get up and go do something else and not feel too worried about having missed something.
I also don't think filmmakers make movies to be played just in the background of your attention.
They don't.
Probably you could count that as a failure of the franchise.
It is. It is, certainly. So I don't know. I feel like it's a fun enough franchise. I don't know. I can see why people enjoy it. I definitely think it's an enjoyable franchise. I just find that when you think about it too much, it's just full of problems. I would also just like to say, why is this the film, this 5th film, where they finally give us a female lycan and do nothing with her I don't even know if we ever see her actually transform. She's just kind of in the group when they're all chatting.
Yeah.
I don't recall ever seeing her when it comes down to any of the wars. And it's like, why did it take them that long to give us that and then not really give us anything with it? It was a very disappointing addition to this.
I agree with that. Although I think you do see her transform in the melee in the castle at the end.
We do. Okay.
We do see her transform, and that, of course, is it. Because once she transforms into a werewolf, this isn't like Underworld Me Too. This is Underworld Token, and she's now a CG character, and so that was unfortunate. It doesn't feel like suddenly when they introduce little elements like that, it feels less like a well fleshed out universe because now tokenism plays in, and you're aware of the fact that there were just male werewolves the entire time.
I also want to bring up the fact that for a franchise that has as its middle film a backstory that really kind of gives us the look at the world from the lycans' point of view and how hard their life was and how awful the vampires are. I mean, it's so weird that all these other films really make the lycans the bad guys when the lycans are the ones who had been the slaves and they revolted. And now it's like, why are they still bad then? And that's what I was really hoping with that in the middle, that by the time we got to this film, that there would be some semblance of trying to find a way to get everyone to come together, not just a big battle. In fact, we even seem like we're going that route, right? Because we have this new lycan leader, Marius, who secretly is in love with a vampire. And I'm like, okay, so are we going to move that route where, those two who are trying to get Selene to get to Eve, is there going to be something that transforms this story that allows like a finale to actually come and bring lycans and vampires together? And I was a little excited for a while with this film, and then largely disappointed when the vampire and Marius were both just trying to kill Selene. And I'm like, well, why are we not all working together by this point?
I know that part was terrible. And plus they gave us, it was essentially another Romeo and Juliet story, which is where we started with this series 5 movies ago. And I was done with it. Like we've moved on from that experience, and I didn't need it again. And I think Marius is sort of, he comes across as the labor leader. He's the great union organizer of the werewolves. And I thought that was kind of an interesting take on it. And I think this is another opportunity or another example of defeat snatched from the jaws of victory. Right, where they actually put some of the pieces in play in this movie that could have been fascinating, and just didn't execute on it. They just didn't answer the questions that they were posing, and I found myself really frustrated by that. How'd you feel about the lore? Any updates to lore, breaking of lore, any new rules that we had to learn that were interesting to you?
You had mentioned this before because, as you said, these all end up blending together. But the lycans, they kind of can do like these half transformations now, which is kind of interesting, I suppose.
Yeah,
Again, yeah. I'm like, we see the moon also in this film. Doesn't seem to relate to anybody. It's just there. The lycans can still control their transformations, even if it's just halfway. It's just strange.
I really liked his hand change. I thought that was cool. I was frustrated that they didn't figure that out until the 5th movie, because these movies take place just kind of so close together that it didn't feel like now there's anything special about him being able to do that, because they all kind of half transform from, we see one half transform in the first 6 minutes of the movie. So I just felt kind of crazy. The one thing that they did, interestingly, I don't know if they were making a conscious point about this, but in the opening sequence, right, where here we are, after the extraordinary recap, the 4-minute recap that we have of the movie, this is a great observation. I think if you don't want to watch all 5 movies, don't worry, just watch this one, because that recap covers everything you need to care about to be able to see where we go. That is a real benefit of this movie. I don't think they intended it to be used as we're recommending. But the opening sequence, the motorcycle chase, things are different, right? Normally in the last 4 movies, she's been a vampire all the time, and her wits and will and strength and all of her abilities they're with her all the time, unless she's drugged or something, right? Unless she's unconscious. In this first sequence, she's captured. I don't know if she's being chased by a bunch of motorcycle lycans, a new breed of lycan, the motorcycle lycan, and she's cornered in a tunnel construction scene. I don't know if she's luring them into the tunnel or what, but there is a moment where she's beaten. They shot with like rope harnesses, right? Rope.
Yeah, it's
arrows.
kind of. It's basically like what they did to William in the second film.
Yeah, right.
They've like shot bolts through her arms and are holding her spread and planning on and beating the hell out of her.
And so she's on her knees and she does this thing where she looks up and there is a sound element. And then her eyes turn blue, as if now she's a vampire. It's the vampire equivalent of hulking out, right? Of like getting so angry, you won't like me when I'm angry. Now I'm a vampire. That's what we get here. And that's a totally new element, that suddenly there is a transformation that they have to go through when they're in battle.
I feel like we've had that from the beginning, because oftentimes, and it's something that's very subtle and to a certain extent leads to confusion on my part.
Is it possibly
seems like,
not very good? Is that what you're trying to say?
That's impossibly. Because they don't always have their vampire teeth either. And sometimes it's like when they get angry, all of a sudden they're like, they flare up and their teeth pop out and their eyes change colors. And I felt like Craven's girlfriend did it in the first film. And I felt like it had happened at another point as well. Or I think it's happened a number of times with different vampires when they get angry with each other. But it's like a tooth thing. But I'm trying to remember if I've seen the eyes do that. I feel like I did, though.
Yeah, maybe that was what I'm noticing. It just feels like she was, because the vampires, she's always strong and fast, whether her teeth are out or not. In this sequence, she was like letting herself get caught or something and then hiding her ability somehow and then Hulk out, vamp out. I didn't care for it. That's all I'm trying to say.
It was a little troublesome. It doesn't help that sequence was edited poorly to begin with.
What you want to pull that apart? What was going on with that sequence?
Well, it was odd, right? It starts off with this motorcycle chase, and then she goes into this tunnel, and we don't ever see the capture or anything. We just hear some stuff, and then all of a sudden she's screaming, and then we cut inside, and these lycans have like already half caught her, and it's like, what just happened?
Right.
She was just on a motorcycle. Like, where did all this happen? It was just the way they cut that together was really sloppy. I felt like they had the two scenes and then had to figure out how to stitch them together with some audio.
Andy, what you're missing is that the motorcycle Selene was vamp out voiceover Selene. So the movie hadn't started while she was still in motorcycle mode, Selene mode. Yeah, that's important to know.
Yeah. No, it was an interesting little vampire thing. I don't think it's effectively done throughout this franchise, but there is something to it that certainly is there. I do think that this was something that I couldn't remember if we had seen. We had the vampires when all of a sudden we have this insanely technical and effects-filled training program that they're doing with these 3D lycans that they're killing and everything. It was just nuts.
They have computers. Computers.
Right? I know. But once they're in the cage match, they are actually jumping onto the walls and fighting on the walls just like the lycans had been doing since the first film.
Yeah, turns out they're real primitive. Everybody's real primitive.
That's all are ready to jump on the walls. Yeah.
And then extraordinary turn. Extraordinary. Worthy of Shakespeare. Varga. He turns around and assassinates all the soldiers that they're trying to train to be better. And it was all part of the trick. And unfortunately, every single soldier is wearing clothing that burns up with infrared light. I can't tell you how stupid this is to me now. I don't even think I may not. I'd like to think I would have noticed in the first, by the time we get here. But now that we talked about it in the second movie, it is so stupid. It so immediately takes me out of the movie that these vampires are wearing clothes that are vampire specific. Why don't they choose to wear the same leather and PVC that non-vampires wear that don't burn up when they get hit with light. I don't understand it. It's ridiculous.
It's a little bonkers that still is a thing. I don't know what's going on with that. I'm assuming that their body burns up at such a high temperature that it just burns the clothes too. I don't know.
I don't love that you spend this much time thinking about it. I don't love that.
Well, yeah. Well, here's another confusion. Here's another element that was very confusing for me, because they set up in the lore this whole idea of blood memories, how when a vampire feeds, it will have the memories of you from the blood that it's drinking from you. But apparently it only works when it's from the neck. Is that right? Because
No, because they have taken it from the arm before.
Well, or directly from the body, I should say.
Yeah.
Because Samira, she bloodlets Selene to kind of steal some of her blood so that she can use it, because she knows that her blood allows her to be in the sun. So there's something to her that she's a nefarious character, blah, blah, blah. But here she is. She's got Selene trapped. She's bloodletting her, and then drinks her blood, like a bunch of it, out of this vial that she has saved it up in. Likewise, we have Marius, who's drinking Michael's blood from these little vials that he has been saving. Neither of them have blood memories from anybody. And presumably it only works on vampires, because these vampires, they're doing nothing but drinking blood. I mean, all these people they're drinking these bags of blood from, like they have no blood memories from anybody else.
But remember, a central point of the movie is that David's mom is actually Amelia, and she saved drops of blood as messengers from the past. So you can take a little drink out of the ring of a drop and get all the blood memories you want. So they never explain it, but it makes me start to think maybe you have to choose if you want to access the blood memories and you're a vampire, right? Maybe you can just turn off that receptor and say, I just want to drink the blood for the tasty, tasty iron morsel that it is. And I don't want to deal with all the baggage, all the emotional baggage that comes with it.
Because it hurts. It can really hurt sometimes.
Love hurts. Love hurts.
Yeah. It's a frustrating element that, unfortunately, just by the introduction of it, they have created so many possibilities that just make it very flimsy, very, very flimsy.
Yeah.
And here's another thing. Vampires can heal fast, and the werewolves can too. Although in the last film, we saw them trying to make it super healing so that they could really heal fast. Sure. But where is the line drawn, right? Like, because I mean, they get injured, and it seems like if it's a serious enough injury, they can't heal fast enough to recover. But as we learn from the vampire spy who goes into the security room and breaks the person's neck, that person's dead. Like, they're not just going to heal that broken neck and be fine. But it doesn't make sense.
Yes, I think there is something in the neck. I think there's something in the neck, because we also get when David, or is it David, or at this point is it Thomas, who gets the sword through the base of the spine and has the spinal cord severed through the neck. Is that the killing? That's the killing blow. Necks are very sensitive for vampires and to them.
It's strange. Or maybe it's just they lose so much blood from that they can't heal themselves fast enough.
Yeah.
See, that was my impression. If they are injured in a way where they've lost enough blood, they're not going to be able to heal fast enough unless they get more blood very quickly. But that also, it seems like then they should always run around like in still suits, full of blood.
Blood, constantly. And how in the world, after they've dehydrated the elders, like, shouldn't the elders, they've lost a lot of blood. They're freaking dehydrated.
Yeah. And
shouldn't
they should be flooded
dead?
with blood memories, too.
Yes, right. All the time. Vampires are really tough to be around in this universe. They're just so weighed down with the universe. I feel like they all are like beat poets. Like, they should be just wearing black berets and wandering around in all black turtlenecks, mock turtleneck.
They're too
writing
goth
poetry. They're too goth. Okay, that does get to one of the great visual sequences of just everybody getting shot and everybody pushing bullets out of themselves. I know you're a big fan of that.
I wrote this in the notes. I'm so tough I can push bullets out of my body. Oh yeah, well so can I. It's like that's pretty much where we've gone by this point. It was pretty laughable watching them bullet push battle.
The bullet push battle. Yeah. That's where we are with this movie. I think that let's transition to the Arctic.
Oh,
so
the Arctic.
I made a point.
No,
I enjoy
Pete. It's the Nordic.
The Nordic. I'm sorry. Well, because we have two evolutions of production design. One is the Nordic coven, and one is we have the coven that we're in, and there are now like alarms, like
which is the Eastern Coven.
The Eastern Coven, and
because the Western Coven, as we now know, that's where we had been, and that one is the one that has been nearly destroyed. And again, because they're calling it that, makes me think that it was in North America. In Underworldia, but it still doesn't make a lot of sense. And we learned that the Budapest Coven was destroyed, and now we're in the Eastern Coven with amazing fortress protection.
The fortress protection, because they have their own Siri and all of their like Coven HomePods tell them when it's going to be dark, and then all the blinds come down, the razor blinds.
Does that seem odd, though, to have your Siri give you only a 1-minute warning?
That's it. I know you're outside, but oh no, the doors are closing. That's what I wanted to hear is their assistant say, "Oh, doors are closing. Almost. Sorry." But so I thought some of that was cool. I thought upgrading the castle a little bit with some smart home technology I thought was fun. It was the bare minimum that they could have possibly done to actually improve the look and feel of this movie or alter the look and feel of this movie. But then we go to the spa, the Nordic spa. Did it impact you at all?
Interesting shift. I was a little disappointed that they didn't bring up the whole 30 Days of Night type of story. The fact that this is so far north that they can roam around for a month at a time, in the winter, because it's constantly winter and it's constantly night. I would have loved for them to even just mention that. I was like, why are they so far up in a place that's so far north? One, it's nearly impossible to get to. And two, I just kept saying they need blood to eat, though, right? Where do they get all the blood
I don't know. I don't know. It is... They're the only ones there. They just run sucking on each other's necks, little bites, little snacks, and then they take a spa. Spas are big. Gives you speedy time. They can go into the Speed Force.
Right? I don't even know what to say about the in-between place.
Well, it's because it's the in-between place. You're not supposed to know what to say about that.
You know what? This is it, Pete. I now understand all of this. This has a crossover, believe it or not, Pete, with Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
I don't know when, Andy, but at some point you're going to regret that crossover. Someone's going to call you out and you will regret it.
No, seriously, there's a line in that film.
Oh, it's crazy. What's his name? Gielgud? No, not Gielgud. I get them all. John Hurt. Yeah, crazy John Hurt.
Yeah,
space.
Yeah, and he says they've gone.
No.
They're not. Yeah, what place? They've gone to the in between or something like that.
That's where you go.
Yeah.
So that's where they're going. They mummify one another and they go to the in between place. Yeah. It's like a spa. It's like a meditation retreat. And when they come out, their hair has been changed and they are very speedy.
Is that called
tipped? Yeah, that's good. That's good. You must have a teenage daughter.
That's a win for our for Cameron.
Yeah,
there you go, Cameron.
Yes. So now her hair is, and she's very speedy, and she disappears for a lot of the movie when she's dead. Right when she goes into the in between place.
Is it a lot of the movie though?
Is it enough of the movie?
If you're going to the in-between place and you only miss like at the beginning of the fight, I'm like, I feel like that wasn't maybe
Is
enough
it
time
just
to really.
that much? Because I didn't time it, but it felt like a long time she was gone. It's probably 2 scenes.
Well, it happens when she's fighting when the lycans attack the Nordic fortress.
Right.
Even though there's this whole thing, they can't come up here. They're warm-blooded. And it's like, well, they clearly proved that wrong. Maybe you should need to learn a little more of this lycan science.
Update your lore.
Yeah, right. Yeah, have you heard of these things called coats? Yeah, so have they.
They figured it out.
Yeah, so they go up there and attack, and Marius finds out from Selene that she does not actually know where her daughter is, and the whole reveal that he's drinking Michael's blood, blah blah blah, and his vampire girlfriend kills Selene, and she slips under the ice and freezes herself, and then she's gone. But really, it's just at that point he howls, and all the lycan run away, and they go back, and now they're going to get ready their attack on the Eastern Fortress or the Eastern Coven, which. To me, it seems like they do right away. It seems like they come back and get themselves in there and start fighting. And then they have a big fight, and David's heading the fight, and what's her name is being evil, Samira. And then Selene shows up, and it's like, okay, so it seems like maybe she's only 6 hours behind everybody else. It didn't seem like it was that long.
But generations evolved. Right now, she's a super vampire.
Are you saying she's like Gandalf the White, where she's been gone for thousands of years, floating around the universe? Andy. But in our time, it's been time at all.
That's what you should have led with, not Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. She's Gandalf the White. She's Selene the White. And now she can kill anybody that she wants, except for the hybrid easily of Marius.
Yeah.
So the problem that I have with that whole sequence, the melee sequence, is that it's more of the same. And I pointed this out in the first movie that I thought was really frustrating. It's just red shirts against red shirts, right? It's just a big brawling sequence, and there is more wire work in this sequence, but it doesn't really take me any place. It doesn't give me any investment into the scene, and I struggled with that because at this point, the big final battle, I want to be there. I want to have my head and my heart in it, and I just couldn't. It was too much noise, not enough signal, and I feel for the movie in the sequence. I really do, because I kind of get what it's striving for, and that it just resorts to the banal, fight exposition it's a real challenge. It's a real problem. By now, I expect to be taken to a new place, and every one of these movies has had the banal fight scene that didn't bring us anything really new. I think the third movie was probably the most interesting of the 5 for me in their final battles, just because they've changed perspectives. And you already brought up, you're now suddenly rooting for the lycans, and that's kind of awesome. Like that's a cool place to be, just to change your perspective a little bit. This movie offers us none of that.
I think a big problem when you're having big fight scenes, the critical part that is required in order to get an audience invested in it, when you have masses of bodies all fighting each other, is you have to know a good number of those people, and you have to have established some sympathy for a good number of those people. Lord of the Rings did it exceptionally. We knew a lot of the people who were in those battles, and even if we'd only spent a few scenes for them, it was very easy to root for them. We were very excited about seeing them go into battle. Now, I mean, they had 12 hours to do it with. I'm like, well, this is 5 films. They've had plenty of time in their own world to do some other things. And I feel like it probably has been, I think it's all Scott Speedman's fault. I don't know why he hasn't been in these last 2 films. But
I was just going to ask the same question. Like, that is a major loss.
It really is. And if they had brought him in, or a different person, I don't care, but just somebody to play that character, to be somebody in the fight. If Eve was here, if other characters if they had left them alive, not just kill everybody all the time, but actually have these characters that we had known and followed over the course of these 5 films, by the time you're getting to these battles, it's like, oh, there's a lot of this. Because in a soap opera, I mean, that's what soap operas do well, is there's constantly back and forth with so many different characters. That's also why soap operas, 1, don't kill people off right away. And 2, when they do, they find ways to bring them back, right?
Yeah, right.
That's what we really needed here, is some of these people brought back. So when you're having these big battles, we actually care about a lot of the different people involved.
Well, and they tried. I get the feeling that they tried to bring us a new character in Theo James, somebody new to care about. We had a universal reset in movie 4, and now we have this new, young guy, and he's going to be the new hero because for whatever reason, Speedman's out. That would have been the story that I'm interested in. I don't think giving us the rags to riches story, right, ascension to the crown story of David was enough for me over the course of these last 2 movies, and I just don't feel like it was earned. I don't feel like if that was the story they wanted to tell, it needed to be more than a B or C story. Like having him become an elder at the end was not enough, right?
No,
I mean, that was not rewarding.
That's the sort of thing that, again, going back to franchises where they really think things out and have all these plans in place, that would have been a great nugget to hide some information of back in the first film when we meet Amelia, or something about, I have, the long lost son or something that doesn't necessarily get brought up. But by the time we get to this point, we find some information out about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It was probably in a locket the size of your face that was hanging around one of the elders' necks, and is also a vampire throwing star.
Yeah, it's frustrating because, and I think you're right. I think that the team was trying to find ways to bring interesting things into the lore and find things. Like there's the scene where Thomas is talking to his son about the Battle of the Pest, and they're looking at this big kind of painting of this battle. And I was like, okay, the pest is, it's the plague. And, so, I was like, are they trying to somehow connect this to the wars in Camus' book, The Plague? Because that's the title. And I'm like, is there something there that they're trying to say? If so, that could be potentially interesting, but I'm not getting enough of it. And that's why it's frustrating, because I feel like there's some interesting stuff here, but they're not doing enough with it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Just a brief note on visual effects, because we've been watching the evolution of the franchise over the course of so many years now. How do you feel like the CG hit you? I mean, we have some real highlight effect sequences, fewer practical effects, more CG stuff. What do you think?
I thought it was fine. I feel like the lycans always look best when they're fully transformed. Yep. I do feel a lot that the transformations themselves look a little shaky at times, but I guess I just don't mind it. I buy into it enough, Yeah. The vampires, we just have Selene kind of running really fast now. I don't think there's a lot of interesting new effects with her otherwise. I think largely it's just the lycans, and I think that they're as effective as they have been these past few films.
You know what we don't get a lot of? As much as we get full transformation of the lycans, we don't get a lot of effort to demonstrate any sort of tooth morphing. And I kind of expect that in a vampire movie. I kind of expect to be able to go in and have those close-ups of somebody saying something threatening while their teeth elongate. And we get none of that.
No.
I didn't find myself missing it until the 5th movie.
That's funny. Yeah. No, it is a weird thing. I don't know. I just don't know. And I still don't know, why are we 12 years in the future? Because nothing feels changed. It feels... Right. And I just wish that was something that they gave us more from the previous film. And I know, if we look back 12 years, it doesn't feel like all of a sudden the futuristic,
Yeah,
it's,
right.
It's
let me go get in
changed.
my flying car right now and just see how things have changed. Right.
Exactly. But I just feel like, I just don't feel like these past 2 films, they've done anything to signal a change. If anything, a lot of the elements feel like they've gone backward, like the train that they take to get up north. It's like, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
You want to talk about getting it made?
I don't have a lot of history with this one as far as the backstory, other than, by 2014, Lakeshore Entertainment was actually wanting to reboot the franchise. They were going to kick it off and start it all over again. They brought in a writer and started working on it. But then they decided, you know what, let's not do a reboot. Let's just make a fifth film. And it was going to be called Underworld Next Generation.
That would have been
Kate
weird.
Beckinsale. That would have been weird. I would have expected Picard to be in there or something. Kate Beckinsale was set to reprise, which is interesting. If it was called Underworld Next Generation, it seems like it was going to be focused on her daughter when you hear the title. But hearing that Kate Beckinsale's in, it's like, okay, why is it called Next Generation then? Who knows? Why are half these films called what they are? Right?
Maybe she's really old now. Maybe it's like 700 years in the future, or 1,000, 7,000 years.
Right.
Maybe.
And her daughter's finally entered her teenage years.
Yeah. She's 16.
But they had everything on. And it sounds like actually Theo James was set to be the new lead of the film. But they had to bring it back because, as he said, my involvement in this, I think it's going to be very difficult to do that with the Divergent movies and my other commitments. So it sounds like he might have actually had a bigger part initially, and then they kind of had to cut it back because of those. So that, and then brought Selene forward more.
That is a shame. That's a crying shame.
That's
because that's an interesting thing, how the practicalities of making movies directly impacts the story. I mean, you never know. Maybe they're out there and they have the perfect story right in their hands, and they lost it because of actors and commitments.
And it's clear that with the third film, this isn't really intended to be Selene's story.
Yes.
Even though they largely have left it just Selene's story through the first two and the last two films. So with that third film, I felt like, you know what, they should be freer to shake things up a little bit. Obviously, Kate Beckinsale in the lead makes them a lot of money, so I can see why they went back to that. But I don't know why they haven't felt, you know what, we can change things and shake things up a little bit and maybe, follow Eve now as she's kind of the new lead or something,
Yeah. That's a great point, because it just, the movie should have had a clearer transition of character, right? We should have had a clearer transition. I think that's a big miss.
Well, it really feels like at the end they're setting it up, because you have her out there on the ice and you see, I don't know if it's her daughter or just kind of a imagined daughter, but she's like, there is only the coming. And it was like, okay, if that's not the title of the sixth film, I don't know what is, right? But it totally sets it up that way. And then, but according to Kate Beckinsale, they're done. She's done. Len Wiseman said they were going to do a TV show at one point, and then that they were going to do a sixth film with Selene or with Kate Beckinsale back in. But then Kate Beckinsale came out and said, nope, I wouldn't return. I've done plenty of those. So if it is The Coming, if that's the next film, maybe it is just Eve, and it's going to be a story that finally, ties the lycans and vampires together. I just don't know.
The director behind this is Anna Foerster, and she started her career in visual effects and cinematography, and was the director of photography as recent as 2013 for White House Down and Anonymous. Also, she is announced as upcoming director of Source Code 2, which is actually just Source Code 1, but they mirror reverse it. You just watch it again. It's really, it's great. Was this her first feature? I think it was. She's done a lot of TV, and she has dipped her toes into many of the of some of my not many, maybe not many, but some of my very favorites. I was a big fan of the procedural Criminal Minds for a long time, and she had a hand in some of the episodes of Criminal Minds. I'm not, I don't know Unforgettable. That was new to me. Army Wives, Madam Secretaries, solid show. She did an episode of that. Outlander. I don't know Outlander, but she had 4 episodes to credit on that one. Jessica Jones.
Got its own big following, that's for sure.
Big following. Jessica Jones, she did the Start at the Beginning episode, 2018, and she did the genre episode, which was quite good, of Westworld. And so, as a director, she's clearly a visual director. This still reads to me as an episode that was handed to her with elements that must be fulfilled. And I just don't see a lot of directorial innovation
No, I don't either. I mean, she's worked a lot with Roland Emmerich on big films like
Day After
Independence Day. Yeah, exactly. So she definitely has a sense about how to work with visuals and scope. And I think you get that in this film, like just all the stuff up north in the Nordic fortress. I feel like there's some of that. And I didn't feel, nothing felt sloppy like the third film did, for another first-time director. I thought she actually handled it pretty well. But yeah, she's not... I don't know, honestly, how much say she had in the script, but I mean, that is one thing that definitely caught my eye with the production team on this one is that pretty much everybody is new. Like, we don't have any of our three, Len Wiseman, Danny McBride, or Kevin Grevioux, doing any part of the story or screenplay on this at all. Totally different people, Kyle Ward and Corey Goodman. And the different musician, cinematography, editing, production design, art direction, set decoration, costume design, hair, makeup, everything's different. I think the special effects, that team might be the only people ported over from the last film. So I don't know. I guess having seen that, I didn't feel bothered that it felt the same, because there were elements that felt a little different, like you were saying. But I would have really appreciated them bringing even more to the table.
Yeah, I think so. But hats off to Anna Foerster for wrapping up the fifth movie. It's clearly she's able to practically and pragmatically deliver a feature film, and she at least understands the universe that she was handed, which is a lot. Anybody in the cast besides the two we've talked about, Kate and Theo?
No, I mean, I thought everyone was fine. Marius is played by Tobias Menzies, who's certainly a familiar face that I've seen in a number of things before. I thought he was fine, but again, it's like, I wish he had more to do here. It's just like, I felt like they were setting up an interesting story with him. And in the end, it's just, he killed Michael and is drinking his blood. And that was it. Yep. It's like, that's all. Okay.
Bradley James, he's been in a bunch of stuff, and he was Arthur in the Merlin show, the BBC Merlin take that ran from 2008 2012, and he was really great. Like, we are all, as a family, we're real fans of him, and so seeing him in this movie, I'd forgotten he was in it, and it was really fun to see him in this role, because usually he's dressed as a king and carrying a sword, and now he's dressed as a vampire and carrying a gun and a sword. But I thought it was very cool as the sort of evil hand of the queen. I think he did a fine job. I kind of liked his understated betrayal of her at the end to serve the coven. To serve the coven line, I thought was really nice. So he was sharp. I thought he was good.
But again, it was one of those things where I'm like, couldn't they have given us something more with that? Because I felt like by the time it happens, I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't have much from that, but okay, thank you.
Yeah. Laura Pulver plays the role of Irene Adler in Sherlock. So we've known her for a while. This is another BBC, the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock. And she's great in there. She was also Karen Lord in Edge of Tomorrow, so we've seen her there. She's in Electric Dreams on Amazon, which is terrific. And she comes in and out, it looks like, of The Alienist, which I've never watched. I've heard great things about The Alienist, Angel of Darkness. So she's kind of all over the place. She's another one of those faces that that really sort of shines. In this movie, she's a rather predictable, narcissistic, bad guy.
Yeah. And again, like, there is something potentially interesting with these people if only they had allowed the story to be a more grand story. It kind of weave these, like, why haven't we met these people in past films, right? I mean, they're all part of the Vampire Council. They're all these different covens and stuff. Why couldn't we have found a way to weave it together better? But
has Charles Dance lost the lisp, Andy?
Well, I think the question is, did they realize that they can't put vampire teeth in Charles Dance? Because I don't recall him having the vampire teeth
here. That's so funny. Yeah. No. And we have James Faulkner, who also is poorly used. Oh, so poorly used. He's such a good-looking bad guy, and they just make him the elder on the council. And at minute 17, we meet him, and we immediately know he is not going to do very well for this. A lot of the cast was also in Game of Thrones, obviously Charles Dance, and as well as Tobias Menzies, and this James Faulkner is also in it. He was Randall Tarley, and so this is a big Game of Thrones. Was a big Underworld reunion, I guess we can say.
Definitely. Who was it Vidar? Peter Anderson, I thought was another one that, he had an interesting face. He was the one who was the, I guess, head of the Nordic fortress. I was never clear, is this its own coven? But they just called it the fortress. So I'm like, maybe it's just part of another coven. I don't know. But
did you know who he was when you watched it, when you saw him appear?
I didn't, because he was such a benevolent, kind person. Never would I have guessed that he played Nils Bjorman in the Dragon Tattoo trilogy, the original films, as the horrible, horrible person who abuses Lisbeth Salander.
Yeah. He's
given so little to do, though.
Great.
And it was,
he is great.
It was a real shame.
It was a real shame. So I think the last, no, that was it. No. And then we also have Daisy Head, who plays the
spy.
Turncoat spy. And she's
not really a spy. She's definitely a turncoat.
She's a turncoat. Yeah, she's a turncoat. And she's fine. She's in the TV show, or the TV series Shadow and Bone, which was based on a book that my kids read, which supposedly was good. I don't know much of it, but apparently it was something. She played Christiana in Ophelia, which was a trailer pick.
We talked about that on the trailer, yeah. Right.
So there we go. Anybody else hot on your list?
Nah.
All right.
I mean, I thought they were fine. I just wish that these characters had been written better, so it was a more robust world worth caring about.
Michael Vondmacher did the music. Another new person for us.
Yes. So this is the third person in this franchise. And, I thought he was fine. It's, again, I don't think any of the music really stands out in any of these films. But I think what he does works fine for the universe,
Yep, me too. A lot of credits, 60 credits. You have seen movies that Vondmacher has done.
Yeah. Well, and then we had Carl Walter Lindenlaub as the cinematographer. Peter Amundsen, he actually has returned. He was an editor, I think, in the third film. And, then we get to, this was filmed in I believe, the Czech Republic. And we have Ondřej Nekvasil as the production designer, Beatrice Brent-Nerova as set decorations, and Stefan Kovacic and Martin Vakar as the art directors, and Bojana Nikitovic as the costume designer. So I feel like, they latched onto a lot of people, probably locally. I'm sure they are quality people who have done plenty of projects and in their areas. And but it's also, you start seeing that, and it's like, well, I'm sure that there was something involving tax credits. Yeah, clearly. But what they did do was deliver an Underworld movie, and that's how can you complain about that? All right. Sequels and remakes, we already sort of introduced that. Do we have anything coming in this universe anymore? Animated stuff? What do we got? I have heard of nothing else. The TV series that Len Wiseman had talked about, that was back in 2016, right when this came out. I have heard nothing more about any Underworld TV properties. And then, since Kate Beckinsale said she's not going to appear in the sixth film, I've heard nothing about any more of those either. So I don't know. But, every 3 to 4 years, they seem to be coming out with another one. So, they're certainly due for one, but I feel like we would have heard about it. So it could be one of those things where if it pops up, it'll be in a few more years and a whole new team of people. Well, let's talk about all the awards it won. Let's. Okay, next. How'd it do at the box office? Well, Foerster's entry in the franchise cost $35 million to make, or $36.4 million in today's dollars, making it the second cheapest entry after the original film. Blood Wars opened domestically on January 6, 2017, after some international releases as early as November 2016. It was the only major release when it opened here in the US, but it could only get as high as number 4 because, of course, the glut of holiday releases still filling the theaters. In fourth place is where it opened, behind Hidden Figures, Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, and Sing. This one went on to earn $30.3 million domestically and $50.8 million internationally, for a total gross of $84.4 million, with an adjusted profit per finish minute of $528,000. That makes it the smallest grossing film in the franchise, and perhaps maybe that's why there have been no more entries yet.
Wow.
Yeah.
People were not, they did not flock to the theater for this one.
Well, as much. I mean, it still made money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we should, let's put a stake in it, Andy.
Let's put a stake in it, or what else do? We spray its face with silver dust, whip it with a silver
I don't think that's
flog.
That's not a thing yet, but if we work hard enough, we can make it so. Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel. You'll see all the movies we've talked about on this very show. If you swipe over in your show notes and tap the word Flickchart, it will take you to this movie in the Flickchart catalog, where you can add it to your list and see how it stacks up against ours.
First up, Underworld, Blood Wars, or The Birdcage.
The Birdcage.
The Birdcage. Underworld, Blood Wars, or The Lonely Guy. I was just thinking about this the other day because I just remembered when he has his dog, and his dog just like always runs right off. I'll say The Lonely Guy.
Yeah.
Charles Grodin.
I don't know. Charles Grodin, I guess, would be the way to do it. Just so dissatisfied how that movie ended.
Yeah, it's a problematic film, but I'd still pick it. All right. Underworld, Blood Wars, or The Emigrants. Oh, I'll take The Emigrants for sure.
I know you will. I'll take The Emigrants too, but I would watch this first.
Yeah. Underworld, Blood Wars, or Next Friday.
Nope. Underworld, Blood Wars.
I will take Underworld, Blood Wars. Underworld, Blood Wars, or The Blob, 1958.
The Blob. I am fine with The Blob.
I would take Blood Wars.
Really?
Yeah. I'm like 6 of one, half dozen of the other here, though.
I think I probably am, too. I'll give it to you, because I just don't care.
We're at that point. We're at that point. Underworld, Blood Wars, or Christmas in Connecticut.
Christmas in Connecticut.
Christmas in Connecticut, please. Underworld, Blood Wars, or Underworld Evolution.
Okay. I think I have to rate this on title alone, because we don't know anything about evolving, but we do know there was, in fact, a war of blood, because there's so much blood and they're clearly at war. This is possibly the most apt title after the first one, which frankly is not apt. I guess the third one is probably the best of the titles, but this one, we have blood, we have war, and it's in the Underworld. I'm going to go with Blood War.
Interesting way to get there. I feel like, boy, I mean, now that you put it that way, I have to debate my own sensibilities with this one, because I'm like, the second one has a lot of problems, but I felt like I enjoyed the second one more than this one, even though this one may be a little more logical.
Snow Selene, Andy.
Yeah, but we also have the Batman, which I did kind of enjoy.
Yeah, I know you did. But we have half Wolfman hand, half wolf hand man.
I'm going to stick with Evolution, because I feel like they hadn't taken it so far where they just kept breaking things. I'm going to take Evolution.
All right. I'll take you to the mat on this one. Let's see what happens. Let's see what the fates say.
Let's do it. All right. 1, 2, 3. Scissors. Rock.
I get every time. Statistically, I'll bet that's always both of our second move, and I never learn.
You don't. Underworld, Blood Wars, or The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. We talked about this on one of the other ones because it's like maybe, they're all vampires.
They're all vampires, and that's just not the story that they're telling.
I will take Best Little Whorehouse.
Is that what you said last time?
No. That was Underworld Evolution, I think. And I said Underworld Evolution.
I'm going to say Underworld Blood Wars.
Okay. Well, here we go.
Uh-huh.
One, two, three. Paper. Rock. There you go. Underworld Blood Wars takes it. Underworld Blood Wars are certain women. I will take certain women.
I will take Underworld Blood Wars 3 times.
If this certain women was about lycans, it would have to just be called Certain Woman. Just clarifying.
Are you proud of yourself for that joke?
I am very proud of that joke. One,
two, three.
Scissors.
Paper.
Scissors.
Rock.
Paper.
Okay. You deserve that.
All right. Certain Women takes it. That leaves Underworld Blood Wars in spot 436 on our chart. 436 out of 483, or a low 10%.
Okay. So how'd it do on your list, Andy?
It did slightly better. It landed in spot 3893 out of 4528, or a 14%.
That is slightly better. It did, I will say, a lot better on my list. It landed at 898 out of 1479, which is a 39, a whopping 39%.
Wow.
If I'm to take this, what the algorithm says over at letterboxd.com/thenextreel, this movie should come in at a 2-star. For me. I gather it is less than a 2-star for you. Is that true?
No, it is right at 2 stars. 2 stars and a heart, just like the last film. I feel like these two were kind of on par. I enjoyed them in their crappiness.
Yeah, no, I'm 2 stars. I'll give it a heart too. I think I have a greater affinity for this movie because it's more of the underdog, so to speak. Sorry, lycans.
That's what the next one needs to be called. Underworld, the Underdogs.
The Underdogs, yeah. So that's it. We did it. We did the whole thing. We did all 5 of the Underworld movies. Andy, are we done with the podcast?
We've peaked, Pete. We really have peaked. We have maxed out. We don't need to do any more. No, honestly, this is exciting because this is the end of the year and we're kicking off our 2021 slate. We've posted the list over on our watch list on our Letterboxd page, letterboxd.com/thenextreel. You can see all the films we're going to be talking about in the first half of 2021, which is a number of really interesting series, kicking off with a series of your design, which I'm very excited to jump into, of Russian science fiction films. We're starting it off with Dead Mountaineers Hotel from 1979. Then we'll be looking at To the Stars by Hard Ways from 1980, and ending with City Zero from 1988.
I want to throw out there, as you plug that series, my very special thanks to next community member Nick Langdon, who is a real aficionado of these films and helped me work through the list. I'm very excited about these 3. And can't wait to get
all
you
of
to
which
watch them.
I think you pointed out are pretty available on YouTube.
This was a thing that Nick pointed me to, that the copyright is of some question with a lot of these Russian films. And so they are not being taken down aggressively when they are posted up on YouTube. And so the quality is fair to better. And you can access them all on YouTube. So we will post links to them as we get to them in our... we'll post them in the community as we post our live streams. We'll post where you can watch the movies too.
Fantastic.
All right.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins. Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth.
Yeah, it does sometimes. But I stayed with the kids over at Common Sense Media. I did. The kids are adorable. Once again, the Common Sense says this is a 17 and up movie. Parents also say this is a 17 and up movie. The kids say it's a 14 and up movie. So the kids,
wow,
they're less interested in what the parents have to say. Surprising no one. All right.
And the parents are more interested in what common sense has to say,
That's
which
right.
might be a first.
That's right. I have a 14-year-old who has written that this movie is good for 13 and up. So 14 years old, 13 and up. The headline is all caps with the letters, the kerning adjusted so the letters are far apart. Take a chill pill. It gives you the feeling that maybe this 14-year-old has at times been told to stop watching that thing right now. And they would like their parents to stop telling them to stop watching this thing right now. So take a chill pill. But only gives this movie 3 stars. This film has got some gory elements, but it's not the worst. If you're 13 and don't like blood, there may be some parts where you look away, but overall it's not too violent. However, if you're a young addict of horror or blood, and you just want to try to watch your first scary film, this is a good place to start.
Young addicts of blood.
Such addicts of blood. This is a good place to start with little to no jump scares, but an ever-changing plot and some good old blood. This title contains sexy stuff, which is what got me wondering, was there actually sexy stuff in this movie? Like sexy stuff?
Maybe just a lot of pining.
There was a lot of pining, and maybe the
Unless
others.
you count Samira's outfit. She was wearing a rather revealing sort of outfit.
Yes, always sexy. But I don't think Samira would have been the one that they were sexy stuffing.
Well, no, she does, actually. Remember, now that I'm thinking about it, she takes her slave boy and drops his head to her crotch.
She does. She does. You're right. There is some sexy stuff. Nice catch, 14-year-old reviewer. Well done. What do you got?
Well, I've got a 5-star by Kalani. 5 stars, Pete. 5 stars. I'm just going to reiterate. 5 stars.
Do it.
And it says, thank you. Her or his review says, awesome. Haven't seen it yet, but I know it's going to be good. I watched the clips on YouTube, so I know this movie is going to be good like the rest of the Underworld series. 5 stars. Haven't seen it yet.
Well, it's like how most of the internet reviews stuff.
Therein lies the problem.
Thanks for exactly nothing, Amazon. Thanks for nothing. Verified reviewer.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. That's right. Thanks, Amazon. Bye. It's hard to believe we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
You're telling me producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a lot of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchase is made through our links. Give us a small commission at no extra cost to you, and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
We covered a lot of great movies that were adapted from other material in Season 10.
Our Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals is where listeners can purchase the source material behind all our adapted film discussions. It helps support the show at no extra cost when you buy through our links.
In our foreign language Best Picture nominees series, we looked at several adaptations, including Z, The Postman Il Postino, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and Letters from Iwo Jima.
We hit the high seas with In the Heart of the Sea from Nathaniel Philbrick's nonfiction book for our Aquatic Killers series.
Definitely a weaker entry in that series.
I bet the book is better.
Oh, me too.
Member bonus episodes featured adaptations like Gone Girl, The Russia House, Ivanhoe, The Hot Rock, The Big Heat, and Naked Lunch.
Oliver Stone brought not just original stories, but also adaptations like Conan the Barbarian, Scarface, Year of the Dragon, 8 Million Ways to Die, Talk Radio, and Born on the 4th of July.
Mary Herron's disturbingly insightful American Psycho was adapted from the Bret Easton Ellis book.
You like Huey Lewis in the News?
Oh my God, it even has a watermark.
And of course, more Stephen King with The Mist, The Green Mile, and The Shawshank Redemption for our King a la Darabont series.
Find links to all of these books and more adapted films on our Originals page. That's thenextreel.com/originals. Every purchase supports our show.
Get the full list of books that we've talked about and start your next read today at thenextreel.com/originals.